dark despair, sunlight glares, caught unaware, an answered prayer. I'm so tired of running and hiding and being cool, surprised to find myself among others feeling that way too. What brings us here draws us near. The answer's clear. We need our peers. We're so tired of plastic faces on every screen. The real world is marked with scars, sacred and obscene, and we are somewhere in between. Take my hand in this strange land. We don't have to be strangers. This place where we belong. Together we're strong. When we know we're loved, we can
Good morning.
Good morning.
Welcome to Holston Valley Unitarian Universalist Church. I am the Reverend Tiffany Sapp, the minister of this church, and my pronouns are she and her. Our opening hymn is number 128, which is in your gray hymnal. It is For All That Is Our Life. Please rise with us in body or spirit and join us in singing number 128 in the gray hymnal. So one of the things that is really exciting about this service to me is that we are going to see some amazing people who are part of this congregation doing some of the parts that I usually do. And so expect some diversity of voices today, which I think is a really beautiful thing. And so our first voice is going to come up now for the call to worship.
Good morning. I'm Alesha Chaffin, and I'm gender fluid, and my pronouns are usually they, them. I wanted to take a second before our call to worship to speak on something. Friday was officially Transgender Day of Visibility, and frankly, most of this year and part of last year, with everything going on in the country and especially in our state, I haven't felt like being very visible. It's a scary time, but that's totally different here. I wanted to thank the congregation and the community, all my fellow queer people here, and Reverend Tiffany and all the staff here. It's a really comfortable place, and I feel like I can truly, unapologetically be myself and be visible. Our call to worship today is a poem by Reverend Sean Parker Dennison, a trans Unitarian Universalist minister. It's called My People's Hands. My people are the ones whose hands are raised, who walk through the world with hands up, not in surrender, but in demand. Hands up, don't shoot, not surrender, but command. Hands up, they will stop bullets, stop the killings, stop anything that wants them dead. My people's hands are raised. My people are the ones whose hands high in the air dance and tremble, whose eyes are wise with what they know of their own hearts. My people have jazz hands dipped in glitter that leave a shimmering trail from both the closet and the grave. My people use their hands to love each other and themselves. My people's hands are unashamed. My people's hands, no longer scarred or broken, have healed stigmata and found their true gods. My people reach up to the sun and touch the curved body of the night goddess, rise up to caress the moon and break her chains. My people's hands worship of their own free will, care nothing for the insecure demands of false idols. My people's hands are made for praise. My people's hands are not content with this is how it's always been. My people are the shapers of the clay, choosing form and texture, keeping time by rhythm and rest, meter and metaphor. My people's hands create pictures of what is and what can be, paint beautiful warnings in colors that exist only for this moment, for this message. My people's hands are constantly ablaze. My people's hands do not wait for permission, travel in constant amazement through time and space to gather bones and blessings, set markers and plant traces of past and futures along the way. My people's hands smell of soil and sun, are stained with earth, always calloused by the unrelenting work of hope. My people's hands are unafraid.
Thank you for joining us on this Transgender Day of Visibility. Please join me in a moment of silent contemplation as we prepare for our time together. Transgender activist Rachel Crandall founded Trans Day of Visibility in 2009 as a way to joyfully celebrate transgender people who are still living. as a day to contemplate and balance the more mournful Trans Day of Remembrance. When I look around this place and I see all of the amazing transgender, non-binary, gender fluid, and otherwise gender non-conforming people, I am in awe that I get to be in community with you all. Thank you for being with us today, and thank you for being you. This is your day, and it's a day for a cisgender person like me to listen and to learn, to treasure your stories and your talents. Our call to worship that Alessia read is a poem by Sean Parker Dennison, a trans UU minister who wrote one of my favorite books of poetry, Breaking and Blessing. Reverend Dennison also wrote our chalice lighting. Lighting our chalice every week is a tradition, a ritual, if you will, that symbolizes our collective community light. The spark is that moment of inspiration that draws us together. The flame is the spirit of this community that becomes greater than the sum of its parts when we are together. The oil is unseen depths of strength, compassion, and wisdom that we draw upon. And the chalice is a container, a place of care for all that holds us. So let's shine together today. There is no competition between this light and the darkness that holds it. Both light and darkness are holy. We light our chalice, not to defeat the darkness, but because for a time we need the gifts of flame, warmth, and light to guide and help us in our endeavors. And when the time comes, we will embrace again the gentle dark, which allows us to rest. And so we kindle the light with awareness and gratitude for light and dark and all that lies in between, each with its gifts, each with its beauty, each part a sacred and necessary whole. We welcome you, old friends and new, young and old, online and in person. You are an essential part of our gathering today. Whether today is your first or your 1000th Sunday with us, we are stronger because of your presence. We are one people of many philosophies, many origins, genders, and sexualities. We are all growing, all loved, all learning, just as you are. You are welcome here. Please silence your cell phones. Please observe this perfume-free zone. Child care is available for children kindergarten age and younger. One of our greeters can direct you toward the nursery if you wish to let us care for your kids while you get some much-needed adult time. People of all ages are an important part of our community, both now and the future, so we welcome our first grade and up kids to stay with here. We have activity bags by the welcome table to give you something quiet to do while we listen, sing, and imagine together. Just make sure to leave them back at the welcoming table by the time the service ends. We are at low risk today. This means that masks are optional during Sunday worship, and our services continue to be recorded and shared to YouTube. And no matter what the risk level, we have color-coded wristbands so that you can indicate your distancing needs, and it is especially important to stay home when you're sick. Instead of having a time for all ages today, we will be having an all ages interactive ceremony of visibility closer to the end of the service. So hang out, listen and learn from our transgender friends today, and we'll get to the participatory part of the service a little later on. Planning our service has made me deeply curious about the intersection between Unitarian Universalism, transgender identity, and poetry, because it just so happens that 3 of my favorite poets are also transgender Unitarian Universalist ministers. It's a really tight Venn diagram, but it is there. This congregation has a special connection to our next poet. Juniper Meadows came into her own as a minister here in East Tennessee before she packed her bags and headed to Nebraska to be the minister of the Second Unitarian Church of Omaha, where she's doing beautiful creative work and where she showed up to testify to the Nebraska State Legislature about their upcoming bills that target the LGBTQ community.
Hi everyone, Reverend Juniper here. This is a poem I wrote over General Assembly in 2022, and I was reflecting on some of the dysphoria I sometimes still feel as it relates to my voice, and how our voices can sometimes out us as trans people, can make life unsafe, claiming the power of our own voice as a gift. A love letter to my voice. Maybe it can be a love letter to your voice as well. I do not sound like a man. My voice is a tempest and tenor, winds blowing so hard they make the bells ring. Some soft starlight skipping to sunbeam shining on everything. I cannot stay small. I cannot embody the bad story of how women are to shrink. The moon in her perigee, full of all the light she has been given, give me a big voice like that so I can bounce it all back, slow and loud. I do not sound like anything. I chew through the vocal cords of the advertising agency, put all my bad faith at passing as the path to safety on the pyre. Let it burn. Let my voice sound like that fire. Smoke and mirrors, silence and symphony. This is my gift to me, to love the sound of my own voice, like it's a gift from God Himself, and speak its million colors. Amen, and blessed be.
With gratitude for the beautiful mosaic of people present with us today, we share our joys and our sorrows. If you'd like to share a joy or concern in person, please use these candle cards, which are located on that back table. And if you'd like to share a joy or concern from a distance, please email minister@hvuuc.org. I have 2 candles cards this morning. The first one is for all our LGBT plus brothers and sisters and siblings in this community and in our state. We stand with them in solidarity. I truly believe liberal thought, women, Black people, Muslims, and everyone who opposes Christian nationalism is under attack right now, and I'm scared. And a card of joy, appreciation for a church culture that employs listening circles so that we can all be heard. Sometimes I marvel at the complexity of the human heart, how we can hold so much joy and so much sorrow together at the same time. I am joyful that we can have a day like this today. It's nothing that I could have imagined back when I was a young person, that we would have a day to honor and recognize the transgender people among us, and it gives me hope for this world. I am joyful for the incredible drag show and rally that many of us got to attend at ETSU Friday night. There was so much color, artistry, and love. The fashion, y'all, the fashion. It brought me so much joy. And that joy stands in stark contrast to the awful laws that have been constantly rolling out to threaten and constrain LGBTQ people in Tennessee and in this nation. We hold sorrow for this reactionary tide, and we renew our commitment to oppose it. And we speak joy that a judge has decided to put a hold on the drag ban, at least temporarily, here in Tennessee. And we hold sorrow that there were so many protesters at the drag show. And we hold joy for the people who came anyway and stood as a barrier between those people and the people coming in. Joy and sorrow held together. And we hold sorrow for another shooting in East Tennessee this week. And we think about all the people who've been affected by tornadoes this week. When I hold all of this together, it seems like an awful lot, and it reminds me of the words of wisdom from Joyce Holst. Prayer is listening for your work orders. And so we pray for our lesbian, gay, bisexual, pansexual, transgender, non-binary, genderqueer, gender fluid, asexual, aromantic, questioning, curious, and non-conforming siblings, that their rights and their lives are held as precious and in the highest regard. We pray for protection around our children, in their schools, in their churches, at their doctor's offices, and at all the spaces that they occupy. We pray for our environment, that harm will be ceased, that protections will be secured. We pray for our world and all the people affected by war and violence. Let there be peace on earth, and let it begin with us. Let's pray with our hearts and our voices and our songs and our candles. And once we've prayed, let's roll up our sleeves and get to work. If you wish to light your own candle, go around and form a line by the window, and Rain will assist you. And if you're on this side of the building, please go around through the back door so that you don't pass in front of the camera. If you wish for us to light a candle for you, please raise your hand until I acknowledge you, and I will light a candle for you at the end. And we light our first candle for you who are not in the building, but are ever in our hearts and minds.
Good morning. My name is Liz Liss, and my pronouns are they, them. I've been here it hasn't been quite a year yet, but we all know James is our pianist, and I take him here. And you are so welcome. He's wonderful.
Yes.
I'd like to speak a little bit about myself. I've been on testosterone for just about a year and a half. It'll be a year and a half this month, which I am so grateful for, because this is something that I know so many people do not have the luxury of. I am incredibly lucky that I come from a family who accepts me. I am incredibly lucky to belong to communities where I'm accepted. And I'm incredibly sorrowful that this is not always the case. A few months ago, I was on a tour with the low brass ensembles, and at one of the high schools that we went to, a freshman came up to me and was saying, "You're trans, I'm trans. It's so great to be meeting another trans person. This is wonderful. I don't know any other trans people." And it really gets me thinking every time somebody comes up to me and says something like that why? Why don't we know more trans people? Why aren't there more trans people that kids can look up to? I mean, I know that I could have used that when I was younger. I didn't know who I was until 2 or 3 years ago. I didn't come out as trans until 2020 when I was 19 years old, I think. No, I wasn't 19 in 2020. I turned 19 in 2020. I was. So I was about 19 when I came out. It's been a long couple of years, and one thing that I keep thinking is things feel like they're getting worse. But things are getting worse as a reaction to things getting so much better. Which I think is evidenced by all of you here, everybody who came out. There were over 800 people at the drag show on Friday. Things are getting so much better. And they are going to get worse. But things are already great for so many people, and they will continue to get better. And as hard as these times are, we can get through it. We have our community here, and we can build the future that we want to see for us, for our kids, for future generations to come. And that is all that I feel like I need to say. Thank you all for listening. Our reading is a poem by Reverend Teresa Ninan Soto. This is Dear Trans, Non-Binary, Genderqueer, and Gender Expansive Friends and Kin, and those of us whose gender is survival. You are not hard to love and respect. Your existence is a blessing. Your pronouns are not a burden or a trial. They are a part of your name, just shorter. Some of our kind use only their names, where pronouns would be. The names they are called. Remember that someone getting them wrong is not a poor reflection on you. It is not your fault. Your body really and truly belongs to you and no one else. The stories of your body, the names of your body's parts, your body's privacy, the sum of your body's glory. It is not okay for anyone to press their story for you, of you, back to the beginning of our liberation. We will find the people ready to be on the freed for the people way. We will go on. No one can rename you other. It can't stick as you offer the gift of being and saying who you are. Mostly, though, your stories belong to you. Your joy and complexity are beautiful, however you may choose to tell it or not tell it. Some folks, cis, may take their liberty for an unholy license. You are beloved. Please keep to our shared task of healing, getting free. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Wendy Hurl. I've been taking a lot of Spanish lately, so I am resisting the temptation to say "Me llamo Wendy Hurl." And my pronouns are she, her, and I'm a transgender woman. I've been a member of this church for more than 20 years, and I currently serve as a covenant group facilitator, a member of the risk assessment team, and I'm in the HVUC band. The International Transgender Day of Visibility, which occurred on Friday, March 21st, was meant as a celebration of trans people around the world. Sadly, to be trans in the state of Tennessee today is to feel as if you have a target on your back. As a seemingly endless stream of hateful bills become law in an attempt to make life as difficult as possible for us, many, myself included, feel constantly threatened and anxious about the future. I find myself wondering if it's time to move elsewhere before it's too late. But it's not just Tennessee. There's an ongoing backlash in this country against gender nonconforming people. Not only are more of us being murdered, there are laws being passed in many states to make things more difficult for us, and especially for our youth. Tennessee continues to be a leader in this race to the bottom, having more anti-trans laws on the book than any other state. These laws include restrictions or bans on gender-affirming care, bathroom access, a prohibition on participating in school sports, and even on drag performances, even though it's on hold for the moment. Conservative politicians, pundits, and preachers have whipped themselves up into a positive froth about the danger we supposedly pose to the nation and civilization itself. It would be funny if it wasn't so terrifyingly serious. My intention this morning is to deliver a message of cautious optimism. Sadly, I also have to offer a warning. The people who are coming for trans people won't stop there. They are also working to roll back rights for women and people of color. They ultimately want a conservative Christian nation with a strict hierarchy, rich, white, straight, cis men on top, and Old Testament-style punishments. It would be a country with no room for me, or frankly, anyone in this room. Ironically, the size and ferocity of this backlash is an indicator of just how far we have come and how much more visible we are. It's important that we remind ourselves of the progress that has been made and celebrate that. I'd like to share a little bit of my own story to hopefully show how far we have come just in my lifetime. I was born and raised in the mountains of Southwest Virginia, right smack dab in the middle of coal country. And from an early age, I knew I was different. I was secretly trying on my mom's clothes as far back as I can remember. And I once told Mom that I wanted to be a girl. I learned early on, though, to keep these things to myself. As I grew older, I became more and more curious as to why I wanted to dress and act like a girl. But in those pre-internet days, there was very little information to be had. Sometimes I saw on TV people called transsexuals. They were always beautiful women who said they used to be men, and they said they knew from an early age that they were female. They lived in cities far away, and to me they were just images on a screen, no more real than Wonder Woman, Carol Burnett, or the Cookie Monster. I searched for answers in books. The Bible said I was an abomination, and psychology books said I was delusional or a fetishist. Sometimes I fantasized about a life where I could move to some faraway place where I could be a grown-up woman, But mostly I saw myself as a hopelessly defective person whom no one would like if they knew what was in my heart. So I hid myself away and tried my best to become a real man. I was 25 years old before I discovered there were support groups for people like me, and I began to gather more positive information. That's when I first learned the word transgender. I got on the internet for the first time and discovered just how many of us transgender folks were out there. Within 2 years, I attended my first transgender support group in Knoxville, which was also my first time presenting as female in front of other people. Making that first step was terrifying, probably one of the bravest things I've ever done. And my life unexpectedly began to open up in ways I had only dreamed of before. Things were very different back then. Our support group only contained people assigned male at birth and their partners. There were no trans men or non-binary folks, and there was a pecking order based on how well you passed and what your physical transition status was. I was near the bottom of this pecking order as a mere cross-dresser. In queer communities, the T was just beginning to be added to the LGBT, and a lot of people in the community were not comfortable with that. In the 70s and 80s, we had been thrown under the bus by both the gay liberation movement, which wanted to present a gender-normative image in the bid for gay rights, and the second wave feminist movement, which saw trans men as butch women and trans women as men trespassing in women's spaces. The few people in the wider world who took notice of us generally thought we were freaks and undesirables. We were invisible to most of society, and the goal was to be able to remain invisible and undetected. In our support group, the mantra was only transition if you have to, because things were so difficult for trans people who did. It was not uncommon for people to lose everything: jobs, families, and homes. So I did my best to avoid transition, instead living a dual existence where I spent most of my time as a man with occasional outlets for expression as a woman. I tried to be satisfied with that. As the years went by, I joined this church, fell in love with an affirming woman, and got married. Meanwhile, trans people became slowly but steadily more visible in mainstream media, and the idea of an LGBT community solidified. By 2014, Time magazine had put trans actress Laverne Cox on the cover and proclaimed that the transgender tipping point had arrived. Non-discrimination laws had been enacted in some cities, and more companies had trans-inclusive policies. And I finally acknowledged what I'd been fighting for so long, that I needed to transition to full-time womanhood. If I had to, at least it seemed like society was becoming a little more accepting. I began my transition right here at HVUC. After a long illness, my wife passed away, and after that, I began to further transition in my non-work life. All the while, I foresaw that the so-called tipping point was just a precursor to the inevitable backlash against trans people. I say inevitable because we call into question the bedrock assumptions of our civilization, that there are two sexes, male and female, and that sex and gender are the same, that the two genders are eternal opposites, and that there is nothing in between. There is nothing more fundamental than that assumption, and to cast doubt upon it for many people is the same as doubting reality itself. So it's no surprise that once we became sufficiently visible to society at large, people started to panic. So here I was, beginning a social and medical transition while a dark wave was looming. One of the first warnings was the North Carolina bill that made it illegal to use a bathroom that did not match what was written on your birth certificate. And then there was the emergence of a presidential candidate whom I recognized as an authoritarian bully and very real threat to our country. What was I to do? I could either move forward with my planned full-time transition or slink back into the closet until the wave passed. I ultimately decided that I would rather, no, I needed to live as myself no matter the cost. And there was a cost. After declaring my intention to transition, I had already lost most of my family, and I didn't know what else I might lose along the way. As it turned out, I was very fortunate. Things went much better than I expected. With the support of upper management, I successfully transitioned at work in an environment where most people were male and conservative with no problems at all. I lost no friends, and I had no problems with any of my healthcare providers. I was able to get my new legal name and correct gender markers put in place on most of my legal documents right away. And I'd just like to add that, unfortunately, that's not the experience of a lot of trans people. I'm very, very fortunate. I knew with certainty that I'd done the right thing and only wish that I could have done it much sooner. And today, here I am, and here we are. To paraphrase Charles Dickens, it's the best of times and the worst of times. The backlash continues, and progress is being rolled back in many places. Not satisfied that Tennessee is already the worst in the nation for trans rights, our legislators continue to try to make things harder for us. We are frequent targets for conservative pundits and hate mongers. The bigots and bullies are out there with their hate on full display, emboldened as some of their own hold elective office. The number of our dead reminds us of how dangerous it can still be, especially for trans women of color. And the body count will rise as a result of this anti-trans legislation. Trans people denied gender-affirming care are alarmingly likely to attempt suicide. At the same time, there are victories to celebrate. The Supreme Court ruled in 2020 that Title VII of the Civil Rights Act protects gay and transgender people in the workplace. We have a growing number of openly trans and non-binary people elected to political offices across the nation. A record number ran for office last year. Some states are enacting legislation that makes things better for us rather than worse. More and more companies have trans-inclusive human resource policies. We are seeing increased positive representation in mass media, and we even have the Pride Community Center and Tri-Pride right here in the deep red heart of the Bible Belt. As for me, I'm trying in my small way to work for positive change. I became the first openly trans person to be elected to our Board of Trustees here at HBUUC, where I worked to make our policies more gender neutral and to promote more visibility for LGBTQ+ causes. I serve on the healthcare equality team at my workplace, where, among other things, we have been able to successfully lobby for the addition of sexual orientation and gender identity to non-discrimination policies pertaining to employment and patient care, and are gaining momentum in our mission to improve the experience and outcomes for LGBTQ plus people. And last year, I was able to convince our Human Resources Department to remove the trans-inclusionary rider in our employee insurance policies so that for the first time, gender-confirming surgeries are covered. I am astounded at how much has changed in the 25 years since I took my first frightened steps into the trans community. Yes, there is a lot going on that is flat out terrifying. But I believe that those persecuting trans people are on the wrong side of history, and that they're trying so desperately to suppress us because the culture is moving toward inclusion. I look around and I see hope for the future. The youth of today are able to express themselves in ways I never would have dreamed possible. And there are more visible trans people here in our community now than ever before. I believe that a better world is possible, and I want to work to see it come into being. I hope you all will too. Trans people are your neighbors, fellow congregants, co-workers, friends, and family. We deserve to survive and thrive. Thank you.
Wow. Thank you, Wendy, and thank you to everyone who's been visible today and helped with this service. It is an honor to work with you all, to see this life-saving, life-affirming world take one more step closer to being a reality. We here are a beloved community where within this walls we can model the world that we want to help come into being. For us here in person, we are about to engage in a time of making ourselves visible for our work for trans liberation. We have arranged this part of the service so that no one's images will be shown on YouTube. So we invite you to come participate without fear, because we know that visibility is a gift, but that it can also be a danger. So without worry, you may come when you're invited, if you wish. We have up here, we have up here a table full of gifts for you to receive. We have some little heart-shaped trans flag pins, and we have some others that say trans rights are human rights. We bless these pens that they may be a way each of us can make our support of trans rights visible. Visible support is what we're going to need to bend the moral arc of the universe to justice. And we bless the amazing people in our community who have made their visibility a gift to each of us. Y'all, I know we're going going a little long. In that spirit, we're gonna nix the closing hymn and let your special music be the closing, which is fantastic. I do have to offer a few announcements and a chalice lighting first. We had one pin left. I know several of you came back up and redonated your pins when you saw that we were running short, because that is just the kind of people that we are. If anyone regrets that choice and wants to come get the last pin, I will have it after the service. Just a few announcements before we extinguish our chalice and have a closing special music. I hope you'll join us for Easter next Sunday. I'm going to be talking about Jesus, but from the point of view of the Gospel of Thomas and the Gospel of Mary Magdalene. It should be a lot of fun. There will also be an Easter egg hunt hosted by the Religious Education Collaborative next Sunday. Kids will meet on the deck after the service to get a basket and wait for the hunt to begin around 12:30, and we're expecting the Easter Bunny to be in attendance. There is a Unitarian Universalist History Covenant group which starts tomorrow and has 2 spots left. You can email George Cross at hvuuc.org or talk to him after the service if you're interested. And I just want to very briefly say, a lot of you got an email from a scammer. A lot of y'all got an email from a scammer this Sunday claiming to be me. I'm just going to real quick say that I'm never going to ask you for gift cards via email or text. I'm never going to do some super secret thing. If you have a question, you feel free to contact me. But if you get an email like that, always assume that it's not me. Also, speaking of our resources, our pledge drive has officially concluded. I want to tell you real quick how we're doing. This year, your governing board, with the input of committees and staff, put together a budget that was 5% higher than last year. This is a modest increase when you consider that inflation has been between 6 and 7%, and we're asking for a 5% increase. As of Thursday, when I wrote this, we reached 96% of our budget goal for the year, and that's 101% of last year's budget, so that is not too shabby at all. Yeah. The board is going to have one last budget meeting this Tuesday to finalize our budget proposal for the annual meeting. So if you want to get a last-minute pledge in today, you can use your bulletin insert or you can email stewardship@hvuuc.org. Every little bit might help us to make it to our full goal. If you're visiting with us today, we're really glad you're here. There's a book to sign, and that will help us get in touch with you. And we also want to give you a heads up that there's going to be a very special service later this month, on the 23rd, I believe, that we are going to actually have a cleanup day instead of regular church, and a chance to work side by side on the grounds, on the building. This is actually something that Buddhist temples do a lot, where every once in a while, instead of regular service, you take care of the gifts of this ground and this building. So look online for more information about that, and please come that day. This is your chance to show up in like t-shirts and jeans. Sometimes y'all do that here anyway, and that is totally cool. But this Sunday, you especially need to do that. That's not next week. That's coming up later in the month, but we just want to put that on your radar. We are going to extinguish our chalice with another poem, and then we're going to finish with the special music that Wendy has wrote, and I will come back up and introduce that.
We'll extinguish our chalice today with another poem by Trans UU minister Reverend Sean Parker Dennison. It's called Communion. I give thanks for my broken body, my trans body. I give thanks for the scars and the missing pieces and the inability to feel at home here, which has kept me restless and undaunted. I give thanks for my body and what has marked it, made it holy and unique and, yes, brave. But I am not Jesus. I am not one who will sacrifice myself for the atonement of those who sit self-satisfied, assured of my damnation. I will not choose to give it to the ones who fall asleep on watch, the betrayed betrayers, those who deny their denial. I bless my own body, and that blessing is mine. Does not extend past the surface of my skin, does not substitute for anyone, does not ask forgiveness for being. I will break bread only with those who know that breaking and blessing are one thing, who worship the breaking open and the broken down, who refuse to be given away, but give themselves over to the blessing of being embodied and sacred and free. I will dine with the people who know all the ways to bless and break and give ourselves to each other, who take and eat and give everything at this table, who do not need another communion or any other paradises or anyone's permission to be free.
So we will save the monthly closing hymn until next month. Instead, we're going to enjoy special music. Wendy wrote this original song called Stand Up that invites us to go beyond visibility to taking action. This is from her trans-themed rock opera, Transposition. This is also when we will be collecting the offering, and honestly, we could not do any of this without your contributions. This is Stand Up.
Yay, church!
Yay, church. Mic check.
Ground and worry about the best we're in. is good.